Hi everyone, my name is Ruby Alcantara and I'd like to welcome you to the Homestrings Diaspora Bond webinar. It's great to have you online. It's very exciting. We know that we have attendees from all over. We know that we have attendees coming in from London, Germany, Belgium, the U.S., and Macedonia, where this first investment is taking place in. So we're happy to have you online. Allow me to introduce our panelists. For those of you who haven't met our panelists before, this is a perfect time to give you an introduction. I would first like to introduce Bert van der Vaart. He is the co-founder and CEO of the Small Enterprise Assistance Fund, as well as Robert Vodicka. He can wave as well. He is the investment officer at SEAF. Then we have Stephen Matzie. He is the investment officer at USAID Development Credit Authority. And last but not least, we have John Samuel, who is the director of product at Homestrings. And I myself, I'm Ruby Alcantara. I am the Chief Marketing Officer at Homestrings. So it's a pleasure to have you here for this webinar. So just a few things about the webinar today. First, we're going to start off with a couple of basic housekeeping, how we're going to handle the webinar. Then we're going to pass it along to SEAF, who will talk you through about themselves, how we came together, and their track record of what they've done. Then we'll pass it on to Steve, who will take us through USAID and the Development Credit Authority. And lastly, we'll pass it back to John, who will walk you through our platform and where we can find this opportunity. And in the final step, we'll have questions, and you'll be able to raise your hand and ask questions. So a couple of general housekeeping. You can find, we will have the question period, as I said, within your dashboard, which is probably to the right of your screen. You'll see an option that's called raise a hand or chat. So if you do want to ask a question, you will be able to raise your hand during the question period. And you can also type in your questions in the chat screen. Along the way, we have our team in London who will be taking your questions. So we have Indetta, Josh, Audrey, and Anne-Sophie here in London who are taking your questions and are ready for you. So, gentlemen, if there are no comments, what do you think? Shall we begin the presentation?
That'll be great.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful opportunity to meet everyone at this webinar, and really want to thank our friends at Homestrings. Our purpose is Ruby outlined, and Bobby, if you can put the presentation up.
I'll pass that. I'm gonna pass that over to Bobby now.
Great.
There he is. Perfect.
Super. Thank you very much. I think our purpose is to give everyone a brief introduction of SEAF, and particularly as it relates to Macedonia. Bobby, maybe the next slide. So SEAF was established in 1989 with the specific purpose of investing in underserved markets, particularly fast-growing small and medium enterprises. Since that time, we've raised and managed 35 funds, a little shy of $700 million. Made almost $400 million. I think today we have made $400 million in more than 400 companies. As you can see, a number of our investors are the development financial institutions. USAID was also an early supporter, but also increasingly family offices, local organizations, insurance companies, Calvert, and not the least which Macedonia 2025 in the new fund initiatives. Maybe the next slide. SEAF was established originally in Poland and have operated in most of the Central European countries, but since then have expanded to where we reach the parts in yellow that you see there. There are a lot of opportunities, excitement in underserved markets as the world converges and as themes such as the ones that we're finding in Macedonia emerge as well. Thank you. Next, Bobby. So maybe, Bobby, why don't you take through how SEAF typically works?
Yes, once we launch one of our funds, we will invest directly into SMEs, and post-investment, we really pride ourselves on our ability to work with each individual entrepreneur and organization to provide business assistance as we facilitate growth. We believe we start with the fundamentals, and that's instilling some strong corporate governance structures. It might be implementing the reachable incentive structures, building out a board that can provide continual oversight to each organization, and then installing environmental, social, and governance guidelines that really are best in class and that will allow the company not only to grow on a financial and operational level, but also to be a steward to each community. Next, and perhaps most important in our view, is implementing financial controls. Now, entrepreneurs often build up the verticals within their companies, whether they're in agribusiness or technology. They do what they need to grow, but they often overlook the horizontal skills which are built on the financials. Once we make that investment and start to work with the entrepreneur and with the business management, not only do we build out a strong financial team and implement the accounting and reporting structures that are needed to really facilitate growth in the future, but we also work on an annual basis to build out budgets, and then we monitor those quite frequently over the course of the investment to ensure that they're meeting their goals, and if not, what SEAF and our investment officers can do to help them do so. As we move along, we help them access new finance to continue to facilitate growth, increase efficiencies through operational assistance, introduce companies throughout the SEAF global network, and really build out marketing and strategic plans that build off of the basic fundamentals but allow them to grow to strong, successful companies both within the local communities, also throughout the countries, and then ideally throughout the regions. Anything you'd like to add on this, Bert?
No, I think you've done very well. Thanks.
As important to us as the financial growth is building out the strong business capacity of each company. We're also committed to building out social impact within these SMEs throughout their communities. It's part of the mission of SEAF. It's what we've been built on and where we'll continue to focus throughout Macedonia and throughout our entire portfolio. Within each fund, we have designated ESG and development impact officers that work with SEAF's headquarters officers to make sure we're implementing the correct standards for these companies, tracking and monitoring the metrics that we deem important, whether it's job growth, gender equality, poverty reduction, and all of the metrics that we find that really help these companies build towards brighter futures. We think that not only does this tap into our mission, but it also leads to lasting relationships between these SMEs and their communities, so that once we exit the investment, they're still strong stewards business stewards for the communities. They've got great relationships with the customers, with suppliers, with their governments, and really with the people in the community that they affect. So we've implemented these standards over the 25 years they've been built on and improved upon, and we also partner with experts throughout many fields to make sure that we're continually improving our work and the work of our SMEs. We do annual reports, and some of the highlights from our research that we've done over the years has shown that for every dollar that SEAF invests in the company, we're able to unlock an additional $13 through growth in our customers, growth in our suppliers, tax revenue growth, wage increases, additional training and benefits. So every time we make an investment, we know that there's a significant multiplier that's happening that's going beyond the simple investing into each portfolio company.
Bobby, I might add at the end of that that one of the things that does happen as these enterprises are strongly linked and are seen to be positive forces in their communities is that both the employees tend to be more motivated, and ultimately we don't have the kind of problems with the local authorities or the national authorities being much more supported as a positive force in these communities. And that has typically reflected in better values on the exit as well. In many cases, small and medium enterprises are not able to attract either bank financing or follow-on financing, but both by implementing the controls and the transparency that Bobby referred to, as well as being well supported by their communities, these companies are often considered to be strong and attractive and achieve very good sales, whether we exit our positions to financial or bigger financial investors, or whether to trade sales or whatever. So there is a business purpose as well as, I think, our own desire to use entrepreneurs as the positive force for development.
And I think we've seen that throughout the years, specifically within Macedonia, where we've been since 1999 and have made, I think now we've made more than 15 investments in country. So if you want to tell them a little bit about our work in Macedonia, Bert.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we did start in Macedonia in 1999. USAID was instrumental in that fund, as well as EBRD, IFC, and the German Development Financial Agency, DEG. Those on the call who are familiar with Macedonia will be familiar with Dnevnik, which is one of the largest national newspapers, with TNet, one of the largest supermarket chains, OnNet, I think the second largest wireless service provider, Data Ponds, and a number of other ones. These were all very small companies when we invested in them. We grew them rapidly, and then were able to exit, whether to the management or to trade sales. Like OnNet was the Slovenska Telekom, and Dnevnik was Süddeutsche Allgemeine Zeitung. In addition, some of the reflows of our investments there were used in conjunction with USAID to establish the Center for Entrepreneurship and Executive Development. SEAF, as you may have seen from an earlier slide, established these, which really provide training, networking opportunities, and life cycle advice to a much larger group of entrepreneurs. I think we have around 700 in Macedonia alone. And these provide not only active development help to these entrepreneurs, but they also help us, the fund manager, get a much better idea about what's going on in the country, who are potential customers, suppliers, or in some cases, potential leads for investment. So we are very happy with our experience in Macedonia. It had challenges in the first fund, as we know, including conflict with the Albanian parts. And certainly today, Macedonia, with all its positive macroeconomics, is still finding itself in a difficult area. We find excellent entrepreneurs there. We've made our first investment already, I think, Bobby, on the next slide, which has been doubling in sales in the 7 or 8 months since we've been there. It's a maker of organic and gluten-free food. But there's a strong pipeline, and we look forward to working with Homestrings, with the investors who are happy to join us. We've put about €1 million into this fund. The Diaspora through Macedonia 2025 have also made a significant contribution, and with some additional monies being invested, we will also be able to bring in Macedonian pension funds and some other local investors. We have an experienced fund management team led by Dejan Kalinikov. Dejan was also in our first fund, and I think in all those aspects we feel very proud to be part of the Macedonia Fund, as well as the other countries that we've got where with DCA and Homestrings we hope to be able to access committed investment from potential diaspora investors. I think with that, I'd like to turn over the presentation to Stephen Matzie at DCA. He's been a great counterparty in getting this all done. Stephen, over to you.
Ruby, did you want to make any comments?
Thanks, Bert. Yeah. Thanks, Bert. Before Steve puts his presentation up, we see that there's a few people who've just joined in on the webinar, Homestrings Diaspora Bond webinar, featuring Small Enterprise Assistance Fund. You just heard a presentation from SEAF, as well as with USAID, with the Development Credit Authority. We'll be going into his presentation shortly. And it's being hosted by Homestrings.com. We're an online investment platform that focuses on channeling investments from the diaspora community back into key projects back at home. We're discussing the Homestrings Diaspora Bond. This is a very unique opportunity that carries a guarantee from USAID, which Steve is going to talk further on. And it's investing, we'll be making a series of loans into a fund that is managed by SEAF, which Bert has just talked about. For any of you who wants to answer questions, ask questions, there will be a question period at the end. Please keep your hands raised. We will allow you to speak into the webinar and to ask your questions, and you can address it to any of our panelists. So please keep your hands raised. I see a number of hands that are raised. So we do want to get to your questions during the question period. If you do want to write your questions down, feel free to write it in the chat section, and we'll get to those questions there. Steve, I pass it on to you.
Thanks, Ruby. Great, thank you. So the Development Credit Authority is an office within USAID, which is, for those that don't know, is the United States Agency for International Development. It is part of the federal government. It's our main foreign assistance arm for non-military foreign assistance, and it's embedded within the State Department. So all of our local offices are part of the embassy community. We work in about 70 to 80 countries globally, and currently have close to 2,000 ongoing projects. The majority of USAID's work is providing technical expertise to a variety of priority development sectors, whether that's building democratic institutions, improving economic policy and macroeconomic stability, or working with local farmers, different health organizations, etc. Recently, we've obviously provided tremendous amount of support, for example, in the Ebola-affected communities of West Africa. Our office, the Development Credit Authority, is a financial guarantor for projects that can attract private investments. What we try to do is we try to connect the different actors that are promoting private business locally. So that could be a farmer, as in this picture, or any other potential borrower, whether they're small businesses, or larger businesses, priority infrastructure projects. And we try to connect them to finance, to commercial finance. Oftentimes local banks, but it can also be international institutions, such as SEAF in this case, that works globally. Where we do that is, we do that where there's priority development projects that USAID has. What USAID does is works with the local host governments in each country to define a set of priorities for development. So in Macedonia, the first opportunity under this partnership, the priority was really working with small businesses and with agriculture to try to develop those parts of the economy. In other countries, it could be something else like health. Now, our perspective is, when we're working in these local countries, is what we see is a lot of mismatch between amount of private capital that's embedded within the financial sector, so proxied by liquidity of bank assets on the left, and the amount that's being lent out, which is the chart on the right. And so this mismatch leads us to believe that there's a lot of private and commercial capital that's sitting on the sidelines. And our goal specifically is to mobilize that capital. And so our office, which is the Development Credit Authority, or DCA for short, is a guarantor, a financial guarantor. We typically operate as a 50% for principal or commercial investment. And so what we're doing is we're mitigating the loss or the risk that the private capital has when making an investment. If, for example, a borrower defaults on a loan, we would cover half of that default. Now, what we are is a specific authority that's provided to USAID from Congress. We were established in 1999. And the guarantee itself is actually a U.S. Treasury guarantee. So it comes with the full faith and credit of the United States government. As I mentioned, our purpose is to unlock private capital, working with our local offices around the world. And to date, this basically means that the budget that we have to set aside as a loan loss reserve at the U.S. Treasury, for every $1 we set aside, we leverage about $18 globally as private capital. The types of projects that we want to work in is ones where there wouldn't otherwise be private lending at this point in time. But we see this changing over time. So this current slide here kind of is more of our aspirational kind of time series analysis, if you will. So the world, traditionally the development world relied a lot on grants. That's changing. And it's changing as the sector of impact investing has gone up. It's changing as private investors are looking for more global opportunities. And there's new sources of capital, like diaspora trying to invest back in their home countries. And so what we're trying to do is change the perspective from a purely grant-driven approach, which many of the donors have done, to one where grants are used more strategically to encourage private investment. And we realize that not every sector can rely on private investment, but where it can, there's no reason to use scarce taxpayers' dollars. So we've worked in a variety of sectors. Our portfolio currently is close to $4 billion since it's grown since 1999. And the majority of our work is in the small and medium-sized enterprises, those SMEs, which is a target for this project. We also have done a lot of work with microfinance and agriculture. So I mean, our process, the way we engage in a project is, as I mentioned, usually is directed from our local offices in the priority areas that they're working in, and they call us up. I'm based in Washington along with my team here of about 20. And they call us up to come out and look at the sector and see if that's an opportunity for private investment. When we do, we engage in a whole variety of financial institutions and other important institutions, whether they're from the government or from businesses on the ground. Our guarantee is predominantly attached to a financial institution. We can work directly with a company trying to raise capital, but for the most part we work with financial institutions, and that is a way to unlock their resources, their liquidity, to invest in these businesses. Now, for the most part, our portfolio has repaid. Almost 90, I think at this point, 98% of our portfolio borrowers have repaid. In the 2% case that they are not repaid, then what we do is we cover the half of that loss. And so the financial institution, once it goes through its normal kind of default provisions and process, calls upon our guarantee, and we pay the partner. So in this case, we'd be paying Homestrings in the case of the default by one of the SEAF funds. The goal here is the guarantee doesn't have to stay in place permanently. Once these investors and new lenders are getting comfortable with the market, the guarantee exits after a set amount of time. So potentially a 10-year guarantee would exit, and our hope is certainly that the lender continues borrowing in that space, which is typically the case in many of these markets. We've seen over the last several years that the SME market, for example, in Africa has just increased tremendously from essentially a non-existent state to where we were before. And that's been the same track record in much of Eastern Europe. This slide shows you the variety of partners that we can work with. On the left in blue is the different financial institutions. So it can be local or international in orientation. It can be a variety of institutions from banks or leasing companies to also capital market investors. The types of borrowers are also very diverse across our portfolio. I would say basically the only type of borrower we can't work with is sovereign entities. Central governments or state-owned companies are considered part of the sovereign, are not part of this program because they would be wrapped up into the U.S. government's sovereign guarantee program, which we also manage but is not part of our portfolio per se. This next slide just highlights the variety of structures that we work in. These are our 4 basic products, but it could be any iteration having to do with debt. And so here you have a portfolio guarantees on a variety of loans. Bottom right-hand corner is bond guarantee, or it could be individual loan guarantees. I'll wrap up here, but this last slide just shows you some of the results through 2013. We have, at this point, over 400 guarantees in place. I worked in 70 countries. Our portfolio has grown from this figure to close to $4 billion now. We have a variety of borrowers who are women-owned enterprises, which is also very exciting. And also, almost half of our borrowers are first-time borrowers, so supporting entrepreneurs and businesses that have not received any commercial finance in the past. So with that, I think I'll hold there. That's kind of the overview of the DCA guarantee and its place within USAID. And I will shift this on to John Samuels from Homestrings.
Thanks, Steve. Ruby, are you going to say a couple words?
I think you're muted, Ruby.
Am I unmuted now? I think you can hear me now. Yeah. Apologies, everyone. While John is just setting up there. Thanks, Steve. While John is just setting up there, there's a few more people that have just joined in. So in case for those of you who just joined in, you're joined into the Homestrings Diaspora Bond webinar. We are featuring a small enterprise assistance fund who is the manager of the investment opportunity at hand. We also just heard from Steve Matzie from USAID Development Credit Authority. The Homestrings Diaspora Bond carries a 50% guarantee from USAID, which was what he was just speaking about, and what the Development Credit Authority is. I just also wanted to make a mention to some of our collaborators. They are actually online here. I see them here. So we have MK 2025. Some of you may know them quite well. I know they were the ones promoting, as well as United Macedonia Diaspora, UMD. So I think they're also online, and hopefully they might be able to answer any questions. And we also have the USAID team in Skopje right now, also online and as part of our attendees. So hi to all of you between Skopje and DC and London. So John, you can take it away. I'll take myself off and put the screen up.
All right, great, thanks, Ruby. So what we're going to do is walk you through, for the first time, Homestrings users and people who just haven't had a chance to go through our site. So what we're going to do is start off by logging into your account. And once we get into the account, we will go to the dashboard. In the dashboard, you will find several pieces of information once you get into the dashboard. On the dashboard, you'll find updates that are available for us right now that we're updating. We will also provide you with links to different news articles that we're constantly updating. Goodness. Excuse me. Excuse me. Okay, so what we're going to do is, Ruby, can you get the screen back on?
Hi, John. If you can just walk through what the Homestrings platform is and where you would find it. We're just having a couple of technical problems on our side with the screen.
Okay, excellent. So what I'll do is I'll walk you through the platform itself. So once you get the, so once you get onto the platform, you'll see that on the dashboard that we'll have updates. We'll also have news and analysis articles that are available for you to take a look at. If you then go to your search options and look into the catalog, if you type in diaspora, you'll come up to a couple of bonds that are dealing with the diaspora. And the one that we're looking at right now is the Homestrings Diaspora Bond, SEAF Macedonia 2. We evaluate each of the investments and we place all the information in three main categories: impact, risk, and reward. And what we look at is we provide the financial information in the beginning, where you'll find the coupon, you'll find the bond rating if it's applicable, and you'll see the general information about the country right there. Then what we have is a video, actually. We often have videos about our different products, and I think you'll see one coming up soon.
We can hear you. We can. Yeah.
1 second.
The sound.
Yeah, so on the fact sheet, you'll also see that we evaluate each of the projects on a allocation value basis. We put the risk disclosures, risk management, and look at the ESG. So we have the environmental, social, and governance sections, which you'll be able to find on the fact sheets. We also try to utilize media in a way that we provide photographs. We also provide videos, as I mentioned. And hopefully we'll be able to put that on for you so you can get an idea a little bit more about the Homestrings Diaspora Bond, the relationship with SEAF and USAID. But again, the goal of what we're trying to do is provide full disclosure for you so you can make a sound financial decision. And at any point, you can always contact us and reach out to us for any further information that you may need. So you can reach us at products@homestrings.com for anything you need on regarding your product and desires and needs. So, Ruby, I think we can, unless we can get the video playing right now, I think we're good. Yeah, Ruby, you think we can play the video? Okay. All right, well, technical issues are still going on, but I think I hope that you can get a chance to go back onto the platform and search and, again, look for the Diaspora Bond. All right, well, again, I urge you all to go onto the Homestrings platform. and go to the Browse Catalog, where you will be able to search for Diaspora or type in SEAF. Both of them will bring you to take a look and gather more information on this. And as we look at future projects from the different Homestrings Diaspora Bonds with the collaboration with USAID, you'll be able to find it in the catalog at the same, using the same search terms. Or Endetta? Well, again, just want to thank you all.
Thanks for that. I hope everyone was able to see the screen now. There was and walk through the platform itself. So for those of you who joined Homestrings recently, in order to log in, log in into your account with the password that you had set up, and you'll be able to find the investment opportunity and the respective information about the opportunity online as someone was discussing. If you don't have anything further to ask, we can head into the question period.
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
I can mute.
And
Yes.
All right. Well, I think as we wait for the team to get back on, again, please do write in your questions if you have any questions for us. We will be able to hopefully present it here. If not,
all right.
You there? All right. Well, if you're not able to,
I think I'm in. Yes, I'm in. Yeah. Fantastic. So we have a few questions from a number of the attendees currently online. So I asked for all of you who are online and wanting to ask questions, when we select you, can you please state your name and introduce yourself? I'll mention who you are, and then if you can go ahead and ask your question. So I first have Walter and Medefe. I'm going to unmute you, Walter, and go ahead. You can ask your question to the team. Hi, Walter. Are you there? All right. If you are going to ask a question, please ensure that your audio is working or your microphone is on. Otherwise, we'll ask the questions that are written on the screen. The next question that I'm going to open up to is Valentin Yambo Gemma. Valentin, you are online. You can go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, Valentin Yambo from KNP, based in London, working in West Africa. I've got two questions. One is quickly to know if the investment is targeting also startup businesses. And the second question is that we usually, as businesses, we can find loan and guarantee for loan, but the most challenging is to find equity side of it. Is your structure system can permit also to raise equity?
John, you want to take that first question, and then maybe Bert, you can take the next part?
Yeah, is this question towards the Homestrings platform, or is it towards the Homestrings Diaspora Bond?
Both.
Okay, so in terms of the Homestrings platform, the platform hosts projects that are debt-based investments. We look at the equity in terms of funds. So when it comes to early stage funding of new ventures, we currently do not provide funding for those projects at this time, unless they may be in the form of a fund. So direct equity investment is not available on the Homestrings platform at this time.
Okay.
Bert, you were nodding your head there. Did you want to add to his question?
You are breaking.
Bert, you're on mute.
You were breaking. I could not understand what you were saying. Can you?
Yeah, I'm muted. Yes, I'm sorry. The DCA, is this better?
Yes.
Is this better? Okay. So the DCA bonds are debt, but as John indicated, we have a fund for Macedonia too, and there is equity. In fact, the equity portion of the fund will be 70%. So the bonds that we actually issue and draw down will always be a minority of the total bond. In that sense, the equity holders are slightly leveraged with the DCA bonds coming in, and that provides us the opportunity to make investments at the equity level, and when the businesses are able to support a degree of leverage, and we don't try to leverage the companies up too much. 1-to-1 is sort of the max. Then that kind of debt part, of course, helps them grow their businesses. I think you made an excellent point, Jonathan, in the sense that early stage businesses in emerging markets do require some buffer, and that's where the equity comes in play. At the same time, many promoters, entrepreneurs are quite jealous with their equity. And as such is built, we find that reasonably priced debt with reasonably good terms through the fund, as Homestrings is allowing us to do here in Macedonia, is a very effective form of financing. I hope that helps.
I'm going to take another question from a written question. This question comes from Paul Musambwa. How does USAID's DCA participate in the sub-Saharan African housing market? Is the first question. Is the 50% guarantee available to just local investors or diaspora investors as well? Steve, I'm going to hand that question over to you.
Sure. We've worked in a variety of housing markets around the world. We probably have a couple projects, I don't know offhand in my portfolio, in Africa related to housing. But overall, housing was a lot more important from a USAID kind of priority point of view several decades ago. It's been less of a priority vis-a-vis other sectors, but we recognize a tremendous amount of need, and within some projects in some countries, that's been very important. Related to, say, slum upgrading, related to reconstruction after natural or man-made disasters, etc. The DCA guarantee can support financial institutions making housing loans. We have an active project right now in Haiti to do just that. It could support mortgage lending, both local and international investors. And we're developing a project now to support securitization of such loans too. So it is a flexible tool that can be deployed in kind of the ways that you were asking about. Thanks, Ruby.
Thanks, Steve. We have another question. I see a hand raised from Konstantin Navovsky. I'm sorry if I cannot pronounce your name. I've just unmuted you. I noticed that you had a couple of questions written down. You also have raised your hand. So Konstantin, please go ahead and introduce yourself to us and your questions, please. Are you there, Konstantin? Navovska. Nakovsky. Okay, are you there? Okay, I'm just going to read the questions that Konstantin has. Oh, he just written. He's sorry, his microphone is not working. So the first question that was written was, how often do you provide reports on the status of investments in regards to gains and losses, or do you have a website that provides regular updated information? John, I think you're the one who can take that question for Konstantin.
Yeah, I think what we'll do is for both this, if we're talking about the Homestrings Diaspora Bond SEAF Macedonia 2, again, I think the fact sheet would be a great source for you to be able to get the updated information, what's going on. And then we'll also send out monthly reports on behalf of the Homestrings platform. And I think, Bobby or Bert, you can discuss that in terms of how often SEAF also provides these quarterly reports or the other type of information.
Yeah. Well, very briefly, indeed, it's quarterly reports that do describe the entire portfolio. And as Bobby mentioned in his part of the presentation, on an annual basis, there's also development impact reports. The quarter reports are reasonably complete, including a summary financial information. As always, investors, if they have specific questions, they can contact us.
Fantastic. We had a couple of questions that were asked prior to the webinar. So I am going to ask Audrey Silver, our events manager, to ask those questions. So Audrey, I'm just going to unmute you in 1 second, and if you can just ask those questions.
Hello, good afternoon. So we have a question. Speaking of Uganda Treasury bills and bonds, how much has Homestrings managed to raise?
Well,
so, yes.
Okay, yeah. So currently, we have just been starting up to add the sovereign bonds and bills onto the platform, and we are currently in the process of raising funds for those right now. So they're relatively new on the platform, and we will send updates on that.
Okay.
Audrey, is there any further questions on your side?
Questions focused towards the Homestrings Diaspora Bond?
Not on the Diaspora Bond. I've got another one, yes. Explain how partial guarantees from USAID and any other U.S. entity work. If we were to target the creation of a sizable mortgage finance fund for East Africa, is there any indication of the amount of and type of support available from U.S. agencies?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's probably two important elements to that. One is our policy is that we don't work in projects that are more than $200 million. So that's kind of our upward limit on an individual project. You want to mute? You might want to mute your, thank you. So that's on the individual project. And then the other really determinant is our local offices have to contribute part of their development budget to create the guarantee, to create this loan loss reserve that we set aside at the U.S. Treasury. That amount is based on a risk calculation of the project. So part of that amount is created from guarantee fees, but the majority of it is from the USAID budget. So that's where any guarantee project we have really has to match the interest of our local offices and their work in country. So in this example, I would have to go talk to our local offices in East Africa to see what their priorities are. Thanks.
We have a couple of questions that have come online. This question is from Dennis St. Bernard. Can these diaspora bonds be floated on any particular stock exchange, example, a junior exchange for SMEs? John, I would figure that you can take that one.
Okay, yeah. Now, so these products are specifically for the Homestrings Diaspora Bond is specifically for the Homestrings platform, and so that answers the question. It's specifically for the Homestrings platform.
The next question is from Sama Salman. Can you explain a bit about the diaspora bonds return as well as coupon versus yield?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if we look at the fact sheet, the current Homestrings Diaspora Bond, SEAF Macedonia 2, is currently yielding 4% coupon and has a 50% credit guarantee on that. And what's the second part of the question, is it?
I think you've just answered most of the question. Can you explain about the diaspora bond return as well as coupon versus the yield?
Yeah. So I believe it's Bobby may want to correct me if I believe it's an annual coupon. Is that correct? Oh, Bert?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yes.
And it is. And then it'd be good to. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. So I think it'd be good to just point out how the guarantee fits into this this project, because what we're doing is, the way you have an online platform like Homestrings is they're issuing this bond and aggregating investment from a variety of many different diaspora and other members of the platform. Once that's aggregated, they actually make a direct loan to the SEAF fund, and that loan is what USAID is guaranteeing, and the repayment of that loan to Homestrings. So we're not directly guaranteeing the bond itself, but the underlying investment. I think that's an important thing that we need to point out. And we're happy to walk through the structure in more detail. But I don't know, John, if that was more the intention for the next webinar in the series, and this was more of a introduction to the organizations.
Yeah, so this is more of the introduction to the partnership. And then I believe in the video, if you have the opportunity to go to the video on the HS Diaspora Bond fact sheet, you'll see the video, and it'll explain in more detail about how the mechanics of the investment also works, if you'd like to learn more about that. And it describes how Homestrings makes a series of loans to the SEAF fund, and how the facility works with that. So I would urge you all to go take a look at the video for further details on that, and we will also be having another webinar that will explain the mechanics of the facility.
Perfect. So with that, I am going to take it from here. We've had some very, very good questions, and just being mindful of time. We promised you a 45-minute webinar. We're slightly over, but there were some very, very good questions there. So to the attendees, thank you very much to all who attended. We'd like, on behalf of Homestrings, we also want to thank our panelists for being here and online. We hope that you were able to find this extremely informative. One of the questions was, will the presentations be available after the webinar? And Steve, Bobby, you're okay that I share your presentations, correct? Yeah, so just look out for that in an email. The email will be going out. We will share the presentations to all of you who've attended the webinar. And if there's, of course, any other further questions, please do not hesitate to ask. There'll be multiple information to that. Also, John was talking about the second webinar in this series. The second webinar in this series will focus strictly about Macedonia. Our good friends from MK 2025 and from UMD, as well as from the USAID Skopje office. We'll see if we can convince them to come join that panel as well. We'll be online ready to answer any questions, or we'll be discussing Macedonia itself during that webinar. More details to come on that. That will more than likely be in late April and early May. And lastly, you'll see a little pop-up that's going to come at the end of this for a little quick survey. So we kindly appreciate any of your feedbacks, comments, suggestions, whether it is on the Homestrings Diaspora Bond or anything about Homestrings in general, or if there's questions that you wanted to address to USAID, DCA, or to SEAF. We are more than welcome and more than happy to take those questions as well. So thank you once again, and we look forward to seeing you online during our next webinar. So thank you to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.